Well, he's just another middle-aged dad giving people advice, but now he has 1.96 million YouTube followers. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. I'm with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. And guys, I had to do a little digging actually to get the name of the guy who runs this YouTube channel, but his name is Rob Kenney. He's a 50-something father of 2 adult children, and he said he and his daughter are running this YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I, ... It's a subtitle, Practical Dadvice for Everyday Tasks, and started it out while shut in during the COVID-19 pandemic, just with the idea of sharing some things he's learned over time. He makes videos about mundane things like how to tie a necktie, how to press a cotton shirt, how to unclog a sink or a bathtub drain, how to stop your toilet tank from running, how to change a tire or check the air pressure on your car, on your tires on your car, how to shave your face if you're a man, or I suppose a woman. In any case, gentlemen, he has suddenly been swamped with people who follow his YouTube channel and subscribe to it. And a lot of the comments on this channel, Stephen Green, just practically bring you to tears, with people basically saying things like, "Thank you for showing me the things I was never shown." And you begin to see a common thread of people who were fatherless, or people who endured a parade of so-called dads in their lives, or people who have, sort of distracted dads who were never really there. And Steve, it's literally to the point where people are suggesting new topics. They want to learn things that they didn't get when they were kids. And inevitably, they start their comment on this Dad, How Do I channel by saying, "Dad, how do I?" And then they ask the question. Steve, you're a father of 2 sons. Does it surprise you that there is such a groundswell of interest in a guy literally kneeling in his bathtub, pulling hairballs out of a drain?
I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised. I'm touched, but unfortunately, I'm not surprised. There are just too many fatherless families in this country. It's maybe the great tragedy of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. I know what that void is like. My dad died when I was 14. My mom was a wreck long before and long after that, so I didn't get a whole lot of parenting directly from my own parents. Some of the basic stuff my dad had already taught me. I knew how to tie a tie and most of that good stuff. But that void is, that's an emptiness that when you lose them young, you never quite fill. And so as much as I'm touched by everybody else, I'm never going to start a comment with that 3-letter word. It's just, can't do that. I already had one of those, lost them, and I'm not going to give that label to anybody else. It's too precious. It's going to be a hard one for me to get through. So let me finish very, very quickly before I completely lose it, because this is a real... socially and culturally, the fatherless family epidemic, for lack of anything better to call it, I think is the absolute worst thing to happen in this country since its founding. And it's been going on increasingly for the last 50 years now. When Patrick Moynihan warned about the failure of the black family back in the 60s with these fatherless rates that were astronomical for the time, white families have now equaled or surpassed the tragic numbers that Patrick Moynihan was talking about more than 50 years ago. It's just awful. Fatherless homes are more likely to result in kids who are violent, kids who don't know their place in the world, kids who grow up poor, and all the rest. So I will share with you a thought that I shared a little crudely, but I'm the dad here. That's my privilege when I want it to be. A thought that I shared with my 14-year-old not too long ago. I said, "Son, any idiot with a dick can get a girl pregnant, but a man starts a family."
Well, Bill Whittle, it really struck me how do I describe it? It's almost like the cry of the heart of America for people who want something so mundane, something that we used to think was like it's like a toaster. It's an ordinary object that everybody has in their home. And suddenly it's like you wake up one day and you find out that a lot of people have never had toast. They had no idea that there was such a thing where you could just put the slice in and it would come out brown on either side. There are so many who didn't get those things growing up. I remember fondly episodes where my boys were helping me repair the van, or in fact recently my youngest son came over and he had a flat tire, and I'm old and weak now. And so he asked me for help, and I said, sure. I got a lawn chair, and I went out and I sat down next to his car, and then I told him what to do. But Bill, there's a need for this that this guy, Rob Kenney, is fulfilling. Do you think there's any hope that this will stir the consciences of people who haven't been there in that role and should have been?
To me, this is one of the most hopeful stories we've ever covered on this show. We've been doing this show for a long time now, more than 10 years. The thing that's so interesting about this is that what Mr. Kenney has done is, and this was not his intent, but he's shown millions of people that they have a burning desire for something that they didn't know they were missing in the first place. They didn't know what they were missing until they saw it. And once they saw it, then they realized, my God, how much else did I miss? And for those of us, I mean, I think you can make a pretty good case for this guy being America's dad. If he's not already, he's well on his way to it. I'd like to get those kind of number subscriptions up. I could be America's cranky uncle. Get off my lawn, and here's why.
That's right.
But with that said, he is doing an enormously important function, because criticism that I've leveled and many people have leveled against millennials is so difficult to constantly remind ourselves that these young people didn't raise themselves. They didn't educate themselves. They didn't set up their own households. The things that seem to be just genuinely appalling in terms of lack of knowledge or abilities or emotional maturity or whatever was foisted upon them largely by a political movement. And yes, when you hear people desperate to learn how to tie a tie or how to change a tire, it's difficult for people like us to take this. Well, it's difficult for me. Just by strange coincidence, last night my wife was talking about two friends of hers who'd gotten themselves a green card through the immigration lottery, basically, legally gotten the green card. And I said, honey, I don't know what that's like except through the negative space of it. I'll never know what it's like to be granted American citizenship, but I know how much it means to me that I can kind of connect to it in a way by just saying, I can imagine what that would be like if it were out of my life. I remember my father teaching me how to change a tire distinctly, with the giant kickback jack that would kill you if you stood in front of it. You know,
Yeah.
Do not stand behind this jack. Stand off to the side. If this thing comes back, it's going to kill you. I was probably 6. Okay, that I still remember. And I remember when you do the bolts, you should do them in like a star pattern opposite each other. Don't do them around at the same time because you can put the tire on. I remember these things. And to not have those things is tough. The guy on some level, he must really regret that he didn't start earlier, because some of the things he'll never get to touch are, Dad, how do I change a spark plug? Or Dad, this would be my favorite. Dad, how do I fix the vertical hold, the tint, and the saturation color on my brand new color TV? Because I was very, very good at that.
Yeah.
But
how do I
all
get the tape
seriousness,
back in the cassette?
in all seriousness, Scott, it is an exceedingly hopeful sign, because it goes to my contention that I've talked about many times when talking about video games, that young men especially go and play video games because it is a world that allows them to act like conservatives, like men. Red Dead Redemption is one of the most popular selling video games of all time. And Red Dead Redemption is nothing more or less than the ability for young people, mostly young men, to go someplace where they're not going to be lectured and play cowboys and Indians. It's just that simple. Really, it is. This tells me that you can't beat the biology out of people no matter how hard you try. And the first step in solving these terrible problems that have been inflicted on this generation, terrible. Not even so much problems. The total number of things that they have been denied, sometimes through good intentions and sometimes through bad, is astonishing. And the best part of this is not that somebody's trying to hammer this into somebody. It's that once this entire generation realizes how badly they've been cheated, their innate desire for knowledge, for acceptance, for all of these things is still there, and simply needs to be reached out and acknowledged and filled. I think this guy is an absolute magnificent thing. And the thing I like most about him is he doesn't call any attention to himself. He is, in that regard, America's dad, because America's dad. I don't know if you've ever seen this. But I highly recommend it. There is a dad compilation on YouTube. I would look it up if I were you. And it's nothing but a series of very quick cuts. One of them is at a baseball game and somebody cracks a bat and this flying piece of wood is coming right into the crowd's about to strike this little girl in the face, and dad just knocks it aside. Yeah. And there's another one where this baby's about to run off a cliff or something, and dad just picks him up. And it's just this constant thing. We live in a world where not only are there very few fathers relative to what used to be, but we also live in a world where those that we see are always portrayed as just plain idiots. How many insurance commercials are there now where the husband says, honey, and the next thing you know, he's in the car upside down in the pool, or he says, honey, do we have a kitchen in the house? And she's busy talking to the insurance agency, making sure everything's okay and so on. Just ain't true. The truth is eternal, and the truth is real, and it's deep, and it's emotional, and it's necessary. And I am very, very, very happy to live in a country that's still got a couple of dads like this man. And my hat is off to you, sir, and keep up the good work.
And we will provide a link to his YouTube channel in the description below this video. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my father ran away from home, and we did not know where he was for decades. During that time, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Jim McMaster, took us in, me and my 3 brothers. Actually, it was 2 of us at first, and then when the 4th son was born to my mother, he came home from the hospital to my grandfather's house. And so we grew up with a man who had been born in 1921, grew up through the Great Depression, fought as a staff sergeant and tank commander in World War II, helped to build communities in the Philadelphia area. And by that, I don't mean he was a community organizer. I mean, he started ball teams and youth organizations. He put together concerts and brought in bands so that kids would have good entertainment, started football and baseball teams, many even full sports leagues over the years. This was the guy who was my role model growing up. And I spent a lot of time holding a flashlight for that guy. And by that I mean he was under the car and I was holding a flashlight, attempting to hold the flashlight on whatever it was that he was trying to fix. Of course, I could never fully grasp what it was that he was trying to fix. And so I had a hard time aiming the flashlight in the right place. About half the time I was aiming it into his eyes, and he had to correct me. And then he'd send me to go get a tool from the workbench. Now, of course, he kept a well-organized workbench, but that was only when he was there to organize it. When he was at work, we would then go and borrow tools to try to fix our bicycles and completely disorganize his workbench. So about the time he was ready to fix a car, nothing was where it was supposed to be. Nor did I know the names of most tools. Or when he would send me to get the tool, he would tell me the name of the tool, and I knew what it was when he told me. But by the time I got to the basement, I no longer knew what it was that he had asked me to get. So as you can tell, my attention span hasn't changed at all in the last 50 years. But I have the fondest memories of holding a flashlight in his eyes and having him bark at me that I handed him the wrong tool as he had the little stub of a cigar in his mouth that never seemed to be lit as he was trying to wrench something underneath the car. He taught me how to tie a tie. He also taught me how to properly wear a Boy Scout uniform because he was our scout leader as well. He was there every day, and I felt no lack of a father, even though I didn't have anybody in my life that I called dad. Some years later, to bring this story to a long overdue close, I did a little research, and I managed to hunt up the location of my biological father and got the phone number by some legerdemain and feats of deception from one of his relatives and called him. And he answered the phone, and I asked, is this, and I said his name, and he said yes, and I said, this is Scott. And there was no answer, and I said, Scott Ott. And he said, Scotty? Now, I will tell you, and Bill, I don't know if you know this, but there's nobody else in the world other than you and my biological dad who's ever called me Scotty. And you didn't know about that before you started calling me that. But shortly thereafter, I arranged my somewhat reluctant brothers and I, two of them, to go out to where he lived, which was all the way on the other side of the country. And we went to visit him. And we're in his house, seeing him for the first time. And you know what we did for a couple of days at my dad's house? First, he said, you guys want to go out back and have a catch or something? And we went out and threw a baseball. And then he took us to the science park. It was kind of like an amusement park that had a science thing there. And I realized afterward that I hadn't missed anything. He had missed everything.
Yeah.
And he desperately needed it. As much as these people on YouTube need Rob Kenney to be America's dad, America's biological fathers have a burning need to be the dad of their offspring. And I hope one or two or more will see Rob Kenney's videos and say, you know what? There's some unfinished business. You want to go have a catch? For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.